So the title of the first paper is Misrepresentations of Chatgaya Language in Tokir Ahmed's Halda, Cultural Appropriation in Practice. The presenter is Mohammad Kamruzzaman, sir, from Jahangirnagar University. Sir, please take the floor.
Dear Chair, thank you for the opportunity. May I share screen?
Yes, of course, go ahead.
Thank you. It's disabled.
Now you can, sir.
Okay, thank you. Dear participants and presenters, I welcome you and thank you for being here. The title of my presentation is Misrepresentation of Chatgaya Language in Tokir Ahmed's Halda, Cultural Appropriation in Practice. The reason behind putting a slash in between mis and representation is that what this presentation considers misrepresentation, it may or may not be a misrepresentation for other. For example, Tokir Ahmed in his film Halda. Now I would like to begin the introduction where I would introduce a key argument of this presentation. Here it is a reading of the film Halda from a viewpoint of cultural appropriation that shows that his representation of the language, Chatgaya language, is a distorted version of the language of Chattogram district that ethically as well as aesthetically misrepresent it. This writing would consider Halda as a work of a culture outsider, that the misrepresentation is a product of unequal power politics of outsider, insider, and presented politics. And this is a discursive analytic of the discursive analysis of the film, because the dialogues are examined from a viewpoint that they are culturally constructed. Before I move forward, I'd like to introduce some of the key concepts that are important for this presentation. For example, the culture. Culture is seen as a complete way of life that includes language, practices, codes, and conducts, and artifacts, power of mass and popular, and low and high. For example, and mostly when the word culture is used in this presentation, it's always related to the word language. Now I'd like to introduce the idea of culture appropriation. Appropriation in general stands for privatization of an item, and culture appropriation stands for privatization of element of other culture for personal use. And there are different types of appropriation. For example, object appropriation, that is a transfer of possession. For example, a possession of a sculpture from a group of member of another culture to transfer the possession. And second is transfer of a possession of an intangible object like song, music, that is transferred or appropriated by member of other group of people from another cultural group. And third one that is related to this presentation is subject appropriation. And subject appropriation stands for the representation of element of a culture presented by a member of another culture that, for example, Tokir Ahmed, who represent the language of Chattogram, being an outsider in a work, in a non-fiction work that can be fictional, that can be fictional as well as non-fictional in both sense, and how it is related to the concept outsider. Before I go into that, I would like to introduce a word that is a Chatgaya word, which is related to the word outsider, because the word is boinga, that is used in Chatgaya language to introduce or to represent the idea of outsider. How it is important to subject appropriation? It is important to subject appropriation because it is argued that someone who is an outsider would always misrepresent or distort the idea of another culture, because the person has less access to the experience as well as understanding of that culture. So as a result, arguably, the person would always misrepresent or distort in a ethic which could be ethically as well as aesthetically flawed. Now I would like to show some examples where in Halda, Tokir Ahmad misrepresented as well as distorted the language of Chatgaya ethically as well as aesthetically. For example, the sound kha in the place of ka is frequently used in the film. For example, the word nokha is used instead of noka, though these two words are not part of Chatgaya language. For example, for example, the word now or no are the words which are the words to which are the words used to represent the idea of noka. But in the film, no kai is used, which is not even part of Chatgaya community. Then the word ekloge is used instead of ekloge, that is not even a part of the word Chatgaya language. Instead, the Chatgaya word which is used frequently is ettore or ekkuare or ekfuare. And number 3 is kaj, which is pronounced as khaz, that is not even part of the language system of Chatgaya community. For example, kaj and kam, these are the words which are used to represent the idea of kaj. Now I'd like to show where some non-Chatgaya or all Chatgaya words used while speaking in Chatgaya in the film. For example, the word koriche, that is not even a Chatgaya word, that is used in the film, but the word goredde is the word which is the equivalent of the word doing in the Chatgaya context. And another word is Zayam, that is not even a Chatgaya word, which means will go. Instead, Zayum is the word which is used in Chatgaya community. And another Bangla word which is not part of Chatgaya community is Amabosha. The Chatgaya equivalent is Amisha, but in the film, a character who is believed to be a Chatgaya individual, he in a dialogue says Amabosha. Now I would like to show a few examples in same category. For example, tiha for the word money, but Chatgaya word is tiha. Shikar, to kill or to hunt. The Chatgaya word is shiar, and the interesting one is folaizo. It's the idea of eloping. The Chatgaya concept is daizo, and folaite is the to elope, and the Chatgaya idea is daite. But these words are used in conversation while people are having a Chatgaya conversation, and those characters are Chatgaya in background, but they are using some words which are not even Chatgaya. Now I'd like to show a few examples of a few sentences while I believe the distortion is taking place. For example, the word misa khota khoibar zaga faite nolaigo. This is not even a Chatgaya clause in a sense. This means why are you lying? The word that Chatgaya people would say is like misa matibar zaga no fodena or misa khota khoibar zaga no fodena, but no like go, the way the last word in the first example is used, it's not even close to Chatgaya expression. Another example is the use of the word keu in the beginning of the sentence and the end of the sentence. Keu not sor nogorish keu, do not move. This is an unnecessary use of the word. Chatgaya people would use this way, keu not sor nogorish or norchor nogorish keu. This way the sentence would be uttered. And the last example where the one where a chagol word is highlighted. The chagol word is a Bangla word, and a character uses it continuously. But in a Chatgaya language, chagol word is not used. It's like the chagol is not a Chatgaya word, while chol is the word which represent the idea of Chatgaya. Now I'd like to share some examples where aesthetically flawed words are uttered by the characters in the film. In these 4 examples, after the first letter, there should be a pause in a Chatgaya community. For example, no hoy, it would be uttered like no hoy. No maro, it would be no maro. No mari, it would be no mari. And anlai, it would be like anlai. And why I'm focusing on this, because when there is no pause, it may mean something else while speaking in the language. In conclusion, I would like to introduce to the idea, Foucauldian idea of power and knowledge that he discusses in his book, History of Sexuality, Volume 1, where he says that it is not important to find out who has power or who doesn't, or it is not important to find out who has knowledge or who doesn't have access to knowledge, but it is important to find out the pattern of changes that it may bring in relation to distribution of power and appropriation of knowledge. For example, the relation of distribution of power and appropriation of knowledge is not always stable, or it's not always fixed. Rather, he proposes that the cultural, social, political environment is always transformational. And how this is important for this presentation, I would like to conclude this way, that it's not that Halda is a production of power politics, and distortion and the misrepresentation are the product of some kind of power related game. But I would like to say that this kind of transformation, misrepresentation, distortion are the beginning of a kind of transformation that would may become problematic for languages or ethnic languages like Chatgaya language, that may continue this way, and with time this may help to destroy the diversity of a cultural and political practices. For example, an ethnic language like Chatgaya language. Now I would like to show a few pictures of the books that I believe helped me for this presentation. And thank you for the time, and looking forward to having some opinion and question in time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kamruzzaman sir. And surely your presentation increased at least my vocabulary of the Chatgaya language. And I'm sure that we have questions. However, I will request everyone to keep their questions for at the very end. We will have a question and answer session at the end of all the presentations. Thank you again. Next up, we have another amazing paper lined up. This one will be presented by Sheikh Tasmima Minmoy from University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh. And the title of her presentation is Representation of Bangladesh Through the Lens of US Media, a Post-Colonial Study. Please take the floor, Minmoy, ma'am.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Let me just share my screen.
Yes, of course.
All right. So the topic of my presentation is, as Mehak has mentioned already, it's representation of Bangladesh through the lens of US media. It is a post-colonial study. My paper will focus on US media portals, and my research will have several news articles which will include international magazines as well. And the findings of the research will be explorative, and it will look at both sides, which is the positive and negative sides of the representation of Bangladesh. So I will be drawing on post-colonial theory, particularly neo-colonialism, and my research will put forward how the West, in the means of foreshadowing democratic media, in other words, stereotyping Bangladesh's culture, along with post-colonial analysis of US media. The research will also do a study on UK and Indian media representation, representing Bangladesh as a nation. So my project will be a qualitative research, and it will focus on post-colonial theory under the umbrella term neocolonialism. I have used 8 media portals. The positive and negative representations of Bangladesh will be discussed. And along with that, Bangladesh's GDP, Bangladesh's history, and growing industries of Bangladesh will be reviewed. So the first article that I have chosen is from the source BBC News, and the article was published as the name Bangladesh War, the article that changed history. So this was published on this was published in around 2011, and it is basically it basically foreshadows the history of Bangladesh. So on June 13, 1974, the Sunday Times published an article in which we meet the journalist and who detail the tale of terrible repression that pushed the reporter's family into hiding and altered history. A Pakistani reporter named Anthony Mascarenhas almost lost his life multiple times, exposing Pakistan's violent attempts to repress the country's breakaway eastern region in 1971. Mascarenhas's account of Pakistan's treachery shows how West Pakistan's political parties blustered their influence and control over Bengalis. Soldiers assaulted Dhaka University, lined up and murdering students and lecturers in the first of many infamous war crimes. Their terror campaign then extended into the countryside where they fought mutinous local forces. Mascarenhas also mentioned how Awami League officials were reprimanding their own members for being disloyal. Thousands of soldiers died as a result of the war. Mascarenhas was taken aback by the Bengali fury, but the soldiers were even more worse, he mentions. And when they went on systematic killing spree, which they said was the ultimate answer. So Mascarenhas has to flee Pakistan with his family, and after his safety was confirmed, he asked Evans, who basically published his article on the Sunday Times to publish it. So as a Pakistani journalist, he was labeled as an enemy agent by the Pakistani government and army. To put it another way, he betrayed Pakistan. And he said that I have observed the cruelty of murder and burn operations when army forces, after clearing out rebels, followed the program of the cities and villages. Mascarenhas further stated, I have seen whole communities destroyed as a result of punitive action. So in why I think it is a positive representation of Bangladesh, it's because the article gives us an idea on how the liberation struggle in Bangladesh is reported in the US media. Journalists like Mascarenhas and their courageous actions undoubtedly aided Bangladesh in gaining its genuine history. In addition, Mascarenhas' major publication story was published in the Sunday Times, which is one of the oldest news portals in Britain. So another positive representation of Bangladesh I have found from Britannica and Avon. These are two online portals news portals who basically publishes news and other articles as well. So so in here in Britannica and Ion, two very positive representations were presented. So which are Bangladesh's economy and Bangladesh's agriculture. After the Pakistani government created new autonomous organization to handle industrial growth, power, water, and sewage management, forest industry development, and road transportation in 1972, the government of the newly independent Bangladesh enacted socialist policies, nationalizing these farms and forming many other corporations to run them. Rapid change combined with the inexperience of individuals in command of organizations resulted in significant disruptions, and industrial output came close to halting. In 1973, the government established the first series of 5-year development plans and have led the country's economy into 21st century. The nationalization strategy was eventually altered and replaced in 1979 by a 19-point program that stressed increased production and efficiency. Many state-owned farms also returned to the private sector in an attempt to attract private investments. So now to the Bangladesh agriculture. Bangladesh's economy has remained predominantly agrarian. Britannica publishes and it further says that the agriculture employing about half of the population in the 21st century, and in our country, rice is the most significant agricultural commodity, although jute and tea, both substantial foreign currency earners, are also important. So Bangladesh as a developing nation has been able to achieve fast growth because of its well-functioning governance system and its agriculture. It's worth noting that Bangladesh's per capita income is now 280 pound greater than India's. If the IMF's current world economic outlook is to be accepted, Bangladesh will once again exceed India in terms of per capita GDP by the year 2025. So another representation of Bangladesh in the US, in the Indian media, which I found from the Indian press. According to the Bangladesh Bureau of Educational Information Statistics, Bangladesh boasts one of the world's biggest education system with 40 million students and over 1 million teachers and 200,000 educational institutions. According to the annual primary school census 2019, the primary school completion rate is 82.10%, 10%. With electrification and 99.75%, the quality of life has improved, spending patterns have altered, and the economy has soared to heights that no one anticipated a war-torn newborn nation to attain in only 50 years. The nation has made progress in overcoming economic constraints and has established itself as a South Asian power to be reckoned with. Bangladeshi people's income levels and buying power are rising to unprecedented heights thanks to the country's expanding middle class. This sector accounted for 7% of the population in 2015, and it is expected to grow to roughly by 34 million by 2025. Now, let's come to negative representation of Bangladesh to US media, which I found from the source, the New York Times. Garment trade wields power in Bangladesh. So Dhaka is recognized for being one of the most congested and packed capitals in the world, as New York Times states. And it is a symbol of the strength of Bangladesh's garment industry. The headquarters of the country's most influential organizations are the factory owners, according to an article of the New York Times. It is also against the law to have these buildings built up. The buildings, although the buildings were ordered to demolish by the High Court, yet it still exists today.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're out of time, which is a real shame because that was quite interesting, I must say. Thank you, Ms. Minmoy, for that presentation. As I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, we will keep the questions till the very end. And our third presenter will be joining us very shortly. In the meantime, I will just discuss her paper, and the title of the paper is Representation.
Sorry to interrupt, Mehek.
Sure.
I think let Mrinmoy conclude her paper.
Yes, can I just
sure.
with my
Yeah.
paper?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Basically, I was almost done. So the New York Times basically really represented Bangladesh's garment sector. So in Jim Yardley's representation of Bangladesh, the country is shown as barbarous and unlawful. The garment industry, which is one of Bangladesh's main industries, is portrayed in a bad light. With evidence and interviews, the whole system, including government officials and the High Court, is ruthlessly assessed. Lastly, the paper that I chose is The Framing of Bangladesh in US Media, which is a post-colonial study analysis, a very similar paper to mine, which is written by Khorshid Alam. So I will just talk about the taglines, which I found out from the paper, how the New York Times and Washington Post represented Bangladesh. Some of the taglines include Islamist fundamentalists, a rare Muslim democracy, a rise of Islamic nationalism. Despite in August 13th August 2013, New York Times described Islamic 7 Alam's group political action as a deadly assault on Islamist protesters. So I couldn't talk about all the taglines which I found out from the paper, And in conclusion, I would like to say the research is at the explorative stage, and there's no definite pattern of the research because I'm still exploring, I'm still researching, and the data that I'm looking for is very limited because if, when I go to these media portals, they ask for subscriptions. So I'm still researching, and the research doesn't contain any particular statement. It is a mixed match. The news portals research focus mainly on the economy and the history of Bangladesh. With the data collected, the articles represent Bangladesh in various manners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You should keep on researching. Yes, thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Suhana Parveen from Jadavpur University, and she will be presenting her paper, which is titled Representation and Misconception of Bangladesh in International Cinema and Other Visual Arts. Please welcome Suhana Parveen.
Hello, am I visible?
You are not visible yet. You're audible, but not visible yet.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Suhana Parveen, currently pursuing my master's in Jadavpur University in Department of Film Studies. This is going to be my take on representation and misconception of Bangladesh in international cinema and media arts. Bangladesh continues to be in media. Fiction conquers fact and hence follows the misrepresentation of a nation. Bangladesh, for the first time, was featured in a Netflix original action film, Extraction, in 2020, starring Chris Hemsworth. Everyone had expected that after the humiliating mentions about Bangladesh in movies like Zoolander in 2001, where Bangladesh is introduced as a country of child labor. The Butterfly Effect 2004 has a line of dialogue about Bangladesh farmers, and in Avengers Age of Ultron 2016, a scene of Chittagong's ship-breaking industry was shown without the name of Bangladesh in it. The movie Extraction basically portrays Bangladesh as a mafia kingdom with child soldiers and drug sellers or dealers. The villains are all from Bangladesh. Instead of showing the hyper-capitalist Dhaka of the rich, the cinema reaffirmed the state of the, ma'am, can I talk to you? Ma'am, can you just turn on the multiple screen sharing because I'm sharing it from another device. So I'm not able to share it.
Oh, of course. Shamshir Bhaiya, can you please help us out?
Yes, ma'am.
So, should I start it from before or from where I'm?
No, you can just resume what you were saying.
Okay.
Shamshir Bhaiya, ও আরেকটা স্ক্রিন থেকে শেয়ার করতে চাচ্ছে, আমরা কি সেটা অ্যালাউ করতে পারবো কাইন্ডলি?
হ্যাঁ, বিকজ ওনাকে যে কোস্ট করে দেওয়া আছে উনি পারবেন আশা করি।
You should be able to do that.
Ma'am, there is a multiple sharing option over there.
Could you please mention who's going to share that screen?
Yeah, Daniel Das. 101.
Okay, Shamshir Bhai.
101 Daniel Das.
হ্যাঁ, 101 Yes, হ্যাঁ, already closed করে দিয়েছি আমি, সমস্যা নেই।
Thank you so much. The Butterfly Effect 2004 has a line of dialogue about Bangladeshi farmers, and in Avengers Age of Ultron 2016, a scene of Chittagong's ship-breaking industry was used without the name of Bangladesh. The movie Extraction basically portrays Bangladesh as a mafia kingdom with child soldiers, drug dealers. The villains are all from Bangladesh. Instead of showing the hyper-capitalist Dhaka of the rich, the cinema reaffirmed the state stereotypes of the Western audience. The colors used in the depiction of the country, as per my idea of color palette in film studies, is yellow as the desert. As we can see in the picture, the Dhaka in Extraction is shown with a yellow tint, which is plagued, and the tinted filter upholds Dhaka as a sickly, exotic, and terrorist location. Although it is a capital of turquoise lights, like the one on the right side, beautiful and luxurious. The defense personnel, law enforcement officials, and the militaries are questioned and insulted. Even the accent used in the movie is not the Dhakaiya dialect, but Bangla from West Bengal. The movie is set in Bangladesh, but it happens to be shot in India and Thailand. When they have they could have just shot it in Bangladesh, what was the use of using aerial photos of Dhaka and then shooting the rest of the movie in Bangladesh? The movie carries all elements of racist, Islamophobic mindset that Muslims cannot run a country, or maybe they are mostly involved in terrorism since Bangladesh is an Islamic country. It grossly demonetizes Bangladesh for the first time, represented in Hollywood falsely in 70% of the screening time. The weapons, the children running with AK-47 in their hands, the treacherous government officials, they seem to blunder the reputation of Bangladesh, a superhero from the West and like a villain from a villainous country like Bangladesh. That is what they have tried to portray. Another time when Daniel Craig in Munich 2005 says, there's enough food in here to feed Bangladeshis. That is what Daniel Craig says in Munich 2005, when the country, according to UN reports, have turned the chronic hunger to advanced food availability by more than half since 2001. Now, we all have watched Harry Potter, and I'm sure there are a few Potterheads amongst you all too. So if you remember Padma and Parvati Patil in Harry Potter, I guess everyone knows them. So the Indian twin sisters in significant supporting roles. Do you know these people, like these characters, the actresses who are playing these characters are of Bangladeshi origin. Afsan Azad and Shefali Chaudhary are of Bangladeshi origin. And these two actresses, they just fit into the frame as a typical South Asian because of their brown skin. And obviously, as an entertainment prop, they failed to differentiate between the different nations of Southern Asia, and is surely an example of racism. The same thing is repeated in the soap, How I Met Your Mother. Over there is a man named Ranjit who is repeated, who is shown several times, and his wife, who is also happens to be a Bangladeshi, is just because of her looks. So this is where we can see racism regarding the Bangladeshis in movies. Other movies where Bangladesh is mentioned is the global cinema, like Family Business, A Brilliant Young Mind, Zoolander, Silicon Valley, This Means War, etc. So global cinema and media is a platform that is constantly checked from time to time by commoners. Misrepresentation of a country like Bangladesh destroys its reputation globally and at the same time creates wrong images about it at international levels. Directors and filmmakers must be inclusive when it comes to creating new narratives to represent Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suhana Parveen. That was really, really insightful. I had a lovely time listening to it, as I'm sure the rest of us did as well. All right, so we move on to the fourth presenter of the day, Samima Parveen from Diamond Harbour Women's University. And the title of her paper is Representation and Non-Representation of Bangladeshi Food. That's going to be interesting. So I welcome Samima Parveen to kindly take the floor and begin her presentation, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. The East is East and the West is West, and never the twain shall meet. When Rudyard Kipling spoke these lines from the Ballad of East and West, little did he know about assimilation and hybridization of cultures, concepts which I will be speaking on today from the context of Bangladeshi food. When it comes to food of the East, the Western eye views all the cuisines under the same umbrella term of South Asian food as a group, quite a one-dimensional narrative. Now, Bangladeshi food continues to struggle with issues of non-representation and representation in the culinary world, even though its neighbor, India, has a growing popularity of its cuisine, particularly butter chicken, being a bestseller dish in Indian restaurants abroad. This may be because Indian cuisine is considered more exotic and alluring than Bangladeshi cuisine. According to Sujata Bhattacharya, in her reasons behind the increasing popularity of Indian restaurants in Prague. Now, Bangladeshi cuisine is often misrepresented or misconstrued as a Bengali cuisine under the national identity of India. This misleading portrayal of a country's cuisine as another country's is largely attributed to the similar cultural origin. And this in turn contributes to the reason why Bangladeshi food cartography still remain largely uncharted. While the West still otherizes developing Asian nations, this otherizing mindset strangely exists between the Asian countries themselves. Bengali food from in India is simply mach bhat, and Bangladeshi food too is otherized by its neighbors. The European nations or the West scorns the Asian countries, that is the East. And when it comes down to the micro level, the state of West Bengal takes on the role of the West and belittles the East, that is represented by Bangladesh here. Quite evident from the eternal debate that rages between Bengalis, the native Bengali in India, known as the Ghoti, and the settler from East Pakistan or Bangladesh as Bengal. The Ghoti in Bengal looks down upon his Bengali counterpart as the inferior, uncultured individual, in the process denigrating the Bengal's food as well, as particularly his obsession with shutki mach. Hence, the otherizing process becomes a chain and a cyclical method. The only the differences between an Ghoti and Bengal cuisines are the taste palettes. The Ghoti's food having British colonial influences and thus tastes on the savory, mild side because of the use of sugar and tamarind, and the Bengal cuisine being fiery, hot, and spicier because of the use of mustard, chili paste, and foro. The Bangladeshi cuisine also has its regional variation, and it embraces its cultural distinction as a means to show that it is a nation with an individual identity. Here, the cuisine is a larger set which has smaller subsets of cuisines from its different regional states. It is because of Bangladeshi cuisine's shared history between the two encountering groups, that is because of the Ghoti-Bengal conflict, that it forms the transcultural experiences out of which new pluralist hybrid cultural forms of expression are being wrought. Now, Rola Bath, in his 1961 book, Food and Culture, a reader talks about food as a system of communication. And over here, we can say that the identity is the signified here and the food is the signifier here. And he further adds that the preparation of food, its presentation, and the differences between cuisine all contribute to a kind of identity. Identity communication, that is the difference between the West Bengal food and the Bangladeshi food, which is sometimes like confused and somehow misconstrued. Now, when the West fails to represent Bangladeshi food, they are in a way rejecting one of the core fragments of Bangladeshi identity. M. Crady talks about hybridity in his 2005 essay, Hybridity or the Cultural Logic of Capitalism, as the fusion of two hitherto relatively distant forms of styles or identity or cross-cultural contact, which often occurs across national borders as well as cultural boundaries. Now, when Kishwar Chaudhary, a Bangladeshi Australian who represented the Bangladeshi food on MasterChef Australia, the 2021 edition, she incorporated Australian ingredients and modern techniques while fusing indigenous Bangladeshi recipes with it, a form of hybridization. The second runner-up of the show also presented a peasant dish, panta bhat and aloo bhatta, in the finale. And it impressed the judges because of the way it stayed historically faithful, and also it somehow brought in modern technique and modern ingredients of sauteing and blanching into the dish. The fact that panta bhat is not served in restaurants abroad, it being a humble dish, Kishwar chose to make ethnic food in an alien land, rekindling emotions of nostalgia and comfort food to recompensate for a sense of loss of identity and to reinstill a sense of belonging to connect her previous life to the present. When Kishwar says that her ultimate dream is of a cookbook, she means that she wants to preserve her traditional Bangladeshi cuisine, what she has learned from her mother and grandmother, and somehow carry it forward from her personal memory to the collective cultural memory and translate it to an ethno-national identity through, we can say, Stuart Hall's process of communication, of encoding and decoding it. Currently, globalization has facilitated the introduction of Bangladeshi food into the mainstream mainstream food industry and has caused its cultural elements to be accepted by non-Bangladeshis. We have this emerging mukbang videos, vlogs and blogs documenting Bangladeshi food and in a way reclaiming the national cultural identity. And in turn, the Eurocentric meta-narrative, it is slowly progressing from the margin to the center. These vlogs being micro-narratives, the mukbang videos in which we have non-Bangladeshis like Koreans, especially whites, Britishers, and other Europeans feasting on Bangladeshi food, street food, are chronicles which are going to become frozen in time and thus be retained in the collective cultural consciousness. And Jacinthe Basir says in her essay that the eater becomes a part of the culture. You become what you're eating. So in a way, when these YouTubers in the mukbang videos and blogs are feasting on these kind of Bangladeshi food, they are somehow carrying on the Bangladeshi identity, and somehow new cross-cultural encounters are being forged, and also further the building effect of globalization is being reinforced over here. These blogs from Bangladeshis, blogs from individuals from Bangladeshi diasporas abroad also help in the formation of new sites of resistance, where they're finding their own voice and reclaiming the space and the narrative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamima Parveen, for that wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the end of the session. Like I promised, we will have a question and answer round right now. So if you have any questions, you can either write it in the chat or you can speak up and ask the presenter of your choice. In the meantime, I will read a few comments from the chat box. So Daniel Das has said, wonderful presentation by both the sisters on two crucial topics. Sajal Roy has said, we are really listening to interesting talks from ECRs.
I have a particular questions to two presenters. The last presentation that has been done from our ECRs in India, and another one, the paper that was presented, I have forgotten the title, on post-colonial analysis of Bangladesh in the US media, right? So I'm based in Sydney. I work and teach at University of New South Wales, and that's my kind of identity. And I'm a scholar in human geography and critical development studies. The last paper that has been presented is quite interesting because they have brought the quite broader spectrum of the representation of Bangladeshi food in media, particularly in popular media, which is quite interesting. But it's ambiguous to me that to what extent the trend of representation has been shaped by the global force, particularly the misinterpretation of media. I'm quite interested to know about this. And my second question towards the presenter who spoke about the post-colonial analysis in the US media, what we understood is that it was a very brief description. I was struggling to understand what particular research method was used to develop the argument that has been presented in the paper, and particularly post-colonial analysis. Why it is post-colonial, and how the post-colonial scholars based in US or other parts of the world has viewed Bangladesh either as a classical success of economic history, or a success for making its economic progress and women's empowerment in the international regime. These are the two questions to two presenters, if they would like to respond.
If I'm not wrong, you are posing one question to Sheikh Tasmima Mrinmoy. Yep. Yes, Miss Mrinmoy, do you have an answer to that question?
That's a question on the Mrinmoy's paper. And I've also posed another questions to the two presenters from India. Yeah.
All right, whoever would like to begin answering the question, please go forward.
Thank you, sir, for your question. So my paper was a qualitative research paper, And I have collected the portals from New York Times, Washington Post, and Times Magazine, and also some online media portals. And what was your another question about the scholars, how the scholars have viewed Bangladesh? So according to my
please go ahead.
According to my research, not many scholars have basically particularly talked about Bangladesh, but they did talk about how the West basically presents Bangladesh, presents the East. So according to one of the researcher, who is Bukhari, he said that portraying as Bangladesh is a Muslim dominated country, so Islam has been portrayed as a dogmatic and prejudiced prejudiced. What it does, it helps to create Christianity as a symbol of tolerance. And another scholar, who is Said, as we all know, he said that in the West, the Arabs are usually depicted as a threat, a terrorist, a dark figure who acts outside of the established moral system and is hence to be feared and mistrusted. And another scholar, which I have researched, is Durrani. He said in his paper in 2005 that the 9/11 tragedy and subsequent events aggravated the situation beyond control, resulting in a causative response of animosity from Western media against all Islamic nations, which also includes Bangladesh. So there are no particular or scholar who talked about Bangladesh, but they did talk about the East and and as Bangladesh is a Muslim-dominated country, so they also talked about how the Muslim-dominated countries are basically portrayed as a religious extremist, or as an or many names advocating the Sharia rule and things like that. Yeah, so I think I was able to answer your question, and it was a qualitative research. The methodology that I am carrying out with the paper is still not done yet. I'm still going on because it is a long it is very hard to find all the media portals, you know. I have to get their subscriptions and all, and it's not every day that the New York Times posts about Bangladesh or Washington Post posts news about Bangladesh. Was I able to answer your question, sir?
Yes, maybe my further clarification would be the claims that you have raised from other scholars, how those claims turn into post-colonial. We would be quite interested to know, maybe in the next time, your post-colonial analysis and post-colonial dimension. We need a crystal clear lens of this. As you said, it's an ongoing paper.
Yes, sir.
So if you have the written piece already, it could be shared with us, and I would be very interested to read your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
and
I will surely mail you if I get the chance to mail you my paper someday. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. We are already over time, actually, but if we could have one of the Parveen sisters to quickly weigh in and answer one of Mr. Sajjal's question, that would be great. And then we can end the session. Thank you.
Like, ma'am, sir, can you just repeat the question once more? Because we are really confused that yeah, sir.
That's fine. I think we are living in a post-colonial landscape. If you call me sir, it means we are interacting the colonial vocabularies. So what I'm really interested to know, what kind of, we have seen the representations of Bangladeshi food and its heritage and culture in Western media. It's well established, right? The question that I would like to pose is, what is the changing trend of misrepresentations or malrepresentations which we are claiming nowadays with particular regards to food? And you have spoke to our sister, our Australian sister, who has positively represented Bangladeshi food. But what kind of change you have seen as a researcher? As a researcher, you're interested to know.
Yes, sir. So actually, it's about the culinary landscape. Actually, I had included post-colonial theory in my paper. So the thing is that the landscape is changing, because finally I feel that Bangladesh is like having an inclusion in the mainstream, if we say the food industry, because and I think 2021 was a wonderful year where I think Kishwara has like reinforced there, and now we have Panta Bhat, which was like looked down upon as a peasant dish. We are finding it in many restaurants, like several restaurants abroad, like people are asking for it, when in fact in our own countries it is like looked down upon, like it is quite a humble dish. I feel that after Kishore like finished second runner-up in the show, it has like opened new avenues. Like she got the recognition, and now Bangladeshi food is gaining quite gaining quite popularity in the food industry. That is what I feel.
Thank you.
Since it has always been like confused with Bengali food from West Bengal, there are like variations and alterations between the two cuisines. So I think finally people are somehow identifying the differences, that the differences between the two palettes, the taste palettes.
Yep. I'm taking my 1 minute, last 1 minute to have a reflection on this, particularly the way you have juxtaposed yourself to coin your argument around the ignorance of Bangladeshi food in Indian social media site and other sites. That's really quite interesting discourse. But if you can bring the dimensions of Bourdieu's theories of cultural capital, then the coining of the paper would be much more interesting, that I can say. Thank you.
Yes, I talked about him, about I talked about the essay, that hybridity or the I think the logical the cultural capital, logical capital of culture. I have included it in my essay actually, sir, about the concept of hybridity over there.
Thank you so much. And maybe we will take one final question, which ideally should be answered very shortly because we are all out of time. The question has been posed by Naushad, and he asks whether people from Chattogram are destroying their own Chatgaya language as well as Bangla language. We have already discussed how outsiders are destroying Chatgaya language, but what about the people from Chattogram? I'm sure it has been posed to Mohammed Zaman sir. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
There is a tendency among the people of Chatgaya or Chattogram that they mispronounce some Bangla letters, like they mispronounce ko and kho, po and pho, bo and bho. Where there is an option, they would mispronounce. Either it can be consciously done or unconsciously, but it can be seen as a political resistance to the cultural hegemonic condition that is being imposed by on their mother tongue, that is right now is like marginalized by the institutions like educational, political, or cultural, where the practice of speaking in Chatgaya is becoming very insignificant nowadays. So it can be a political resistance or like misrepresentation of Bangla by Chatgaya people as well. Thank you for the question, Mr. Shoaib or Naushad.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to a close. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.